A to Z Mysteries, The Absent Author, written by Ron Roy, published by Scholastic. Chapter 4. Mr. Paskey shooed them out of the book nook and locked the front door. "I have to eat lunch," he said. He scurried down Main Street. "Come on," Dink said. "There's a phone in Ellie's diner." "Good, we can eat while you're calling." Josh stopped. "Who are you calling?" "The airport," said Dink, "to see if Wallace Wallace was on the 7 o'clock flight last night." They walked to Ellie's diner just as Jimmy Fallon and his grandfather came out. Jimmy was working on a triple-decker chocolate cone. Ellie stood behind the counter. As usual, her apron was smeared with ketchup, mustard, chocolate, and lots of stuff Dink didn't recognize. Ellie smiled. "Hi, Dink. Butter crunch, right?" Dink shook his head. "No thanks, Ellie. I came to use the phone." "Excuse me, would it be all right if I bought you each a cone?" Mavis Green asked. "I was going to buy lunch for Mr. Wallace anyways." "Gee, thanks," Josh said. "I'll have a scoop of mint chip and a scoop of pistachio." "Oh, you like green ice cream too?" Mavis said. She smiled shyly. "I'll have the same, please." "I like pink ice cream," Ruth Rose said. "I'll have strawberry cone, please. 1 scoop." "How about you, Dink?" Mavis asked. "I'm not hungry, thanks," he said. "But you guys go ahead. I'm going to call the airport." Dink felt guilty. If he hadn't invited Wallace Wallace to Greenlawn, his favorite author would be safe at home in his castle in Maine. But Dink couldn't help feeling excited, too. He felt like a detective from one of Wallace Wallace's books. Dink stepped into the phone booth, looked up the number for New England Airlines, and called. When a voice came on, he asked if Wallace Wallace had been aboard Flight 3132 last night. He was? "Did it land at 7 o'clock?" Dink asked. "Thanks a lot." He rushed out of the phone booth. "Hey guys, they told me Wallace Wallace was on the plane and it landed right on time." "So he didn't miss his flight," Ruth Rose said through strawberry pink lips. "That's right." Dink pulled out the itinerary. He drew a line through airport. "This is so exciting," Ruth Rose said. "Now what?" Josh asked, working on his double dipper. Dink pointed to his next circle on the itinerary. "Now we need to find out if a taxi picked him up," he said. "Lawrence taxi is over by the river," Ruth Rose said. Dink looked at Mavis. "Would you like to come with us? We can walk there in 5 minutes." Mavis Green wiped her lips carefully with a napkin. "I'd love to come," she said in her soft voice. They left Ellie's diner, walked left on Bridge Lane, then headed down Woodview Road toward the river. "Mr. Paskey looked pretty upset, didn't he?" Josh said, crunching the last of his cone. His chin was green. "Wouldn't you be upset if you had a bunch of customers at your store waiting to meet a famous author and he didn't show up?" Ruth Rose asked. "Yeah, but he was sweating buckets," Josh said. "I wonder if Mr. Paskey kidnapped Wallace Wallace." "Josh, get real. Why would Mr. Paskey kidnap an author?" asked Ruth Rose. "He sells tons of Wallace Wallace books." "I don't think Mr. Paskey is the kidnapper," Dink said. "But, in a way, Josh is right. Detectives should consider everyone as a suspect, just the way they do in Wallace Wallace books." At River Road, they turned left. 2 minutes later, Dink pushed open the door of Lawrence Taxi Service Office. He asked the man behind the counter if one of his drivers had met Flight 3132 at Bradley Airport the previous night. The man ran his finger down a list on a clipboard. "That would be Maureen Higgins. She's out back eating her lunch," he said, pointing over his shoulder. "Walk right through." They cut through the building onto a grassy area and back. Through the trees, Dink could see the Indian River. The sun reflected off the water like bright coins. A woman was sitting at a picnic table eating a sandwich and filling a crossword puzzle. "Excuse me, are you Maureen Higgins?" Dink asked. The woman shook her head without looking up. "Nope, I'm Marilyn Monroe." The woman wrote in another letter. Then she looked up. She had the merriest blue eyes Dink had ever seen. "Yeah, cutie pie, I'm Maureen." She pointed her sandwich at Dink. "And who might you be?" "I'm Dink Duncan," he said. "These are my friends, Josh, Ruth Rose, and Mavis." "We wondered if you could help us," Ruth Rose said. Maureen stared at them. "How?" "Did you pick up a man named Wallace Wallace at the airport last night?" Dink asked. Maureen squinted one of her blue eyes. "Why do you want to know?" "Because he's missing," said Josh. "Well, I sure ain't got him." Maureen took a bite out of her sandwich. Mayonnaise oozed onto her fingers. "I know. I mean, we didn't think you had him," Dink said. "But did you pick him up?" Maureen nodded, swallowing. Sure, I picked him up, 7 o'clock sharp. I was there with a sign saying Wallace. The guy spots me, trots over. I take him out to my taxi. He climbs in, carries a small suitcase, kind of spooky guy, dressed in a hat, long raincoat, sunglasses. Sunglasses at night. Doesn't speak a word, just sits. Spooky. Did you take him to the Shangri-La Hotel? Dink asked. Yep, those were my orders. Guy didn't have to give directions, but it would have been nice if he would have said something. Pass the time, you know. A lot of people, they chat just to act friendly. Not this one, quiet as a mouse in the back seat. Maureen wiped mayonnaise from her fingers and lips. Who is this Wallace fella anyways? He's a famous writer, Ruth Rose said. Maureen's mouth fell open. You mean I had a celebrity in my cab and I never even knew it? What happened when you got to the hotel? Josh asked. Maureen stood up, tossed her napkin in the trash. I get out of my side. Then I open his door. He hops out, hands me a 20. Last I seen, he's scooting into the lobby. Dink pulled out the itinerary. He crossed out taxi with a thick black line. Then he drew a question mark next to hotel. Thanks a lot, Miss Higgins, he said. Come on, guys. I have a feeling we're getting closer to finding Wallace. Maureen put her hand on Dink's arm. I just thought of something, she said. When he handed me my fare, this Wallace fella was smiling. Dink stared at Maureen. Smiling? She nodded. Yep. Had a silly grin on his face, like he knew some big secret or something.